There are many places on our planet with surprising realities, but few as extreme and baffling as this one. A nation where laws allow mandatory virginity tests, accept polygamy as a means of survival, tolerate the kidnapping of women to turn them into wives, and have even gone so far as to ban Christmas. In this new video from Uncensored World, we will travel to Tajikistan, the mysterious land where the mountains seem to touch the sky, one of the most impressive, hidden, and forgotten corners of the planet. A country you probably didn't know existed due to its location in one of the most remote and inaccessible areas, with a forbidden and often lethal border, considered by many to be the most dangerous on Earth. But it is also a magical region, where the tallest dam on the planet will soon rise, full of natural wonders that take the breath away of anyone who discovers them, with huge mountains made of salt, one of the highest roads on Earth known as the top of the world, legendary lakes and even ancient ruins that have led many to call it the Pompeii of Central Asia. A nation that seems straight out of a fantasy world, ruled by a president who not only changed the constitution to allow himself to be re-elected indefinitely, but also imposed the obligation to hang his portrait inside the homes of his citizens. In this country, the fashion for gold teeth coexists with laws that prohibit crying or excessive mourning during funerals. And if that weren't enough, the police have even organized manhunts to forcibly shave thousands of bearded men. Get ready to discover what many consider to be the most extravagant country on the planet. Pay attention, and don't miss this video. Soon you'll be traveling with us to what is probably one of the most unexplored places on Earth. Let's get started. Located in the remote heart of Central Asia, Tajikistan is one of the least known and least visited countries on the planet, characteristics that also make it one of the strangest nations on Earth. Hidden between the imposing mountain ranges of the Pamir and the Hindu Kush, its territory stretches like a labyrinth of endless mountains, from the arid borders of Uzbekistan and Afghanistan to the hidden valleys that border China and the steppes of Kyrgyzstan. Nestled in one of the most rugged and wild regions on Earth, Tajikistan is a country that many would not be able to locate on a map. However, beyond its borders lies a world forgotten by time, where villages seem suspended in another century, traditions resist the passage of modernity, and roads wind through passes that are as dangerous as they are fascinating. It is a region where the landscape can be as beautiful as it is deadly, where crossing from one valley to another can mean facing extreme temperatures, snowstorms, or routes blocked by avalanches. These are borders where nature is not the only threat, as you will soon discover in more detail. With an area of approximately 144,000 square kilometers, Tajikistan is home to an estimated population of 10 million. The population density is remarkably low, as the mountainous and inhospitable terrain means that almost the entire population is concentrated in small valleys and cities. The official language is Tajik, a variant of Persian, although Russian is also widely spoken due to the historical influence of the Soviet Union. In addition, there are minorities who speak Uzbek, Kyrgyz, and other languages, reflecting the country's ethnic diversity. As you can see, Tajikistan's geography is dominated by huge mountains, which cover more than 90% of its territory. The Pamir and Alai mountain ranges stretch across the country, with peaks exceeding 7,000 meters in altitude, such as Ismail Samani Peak, formerly known as Communism Peak, which reaches 7,495 meters and is the highest point in Tajikistan. These mountains have been natural barriers that have isolated entire communities for centuries. These obstacles have played a major role in some of the most impressive constructions in the country and the world, such as the famous Death Tunnel, and what will soon be the highest dam on the planet. The tunnel, known as the Anzab Tunnel, called the Tunnel of Death by locals, is one of the most iconic and feared infrastructures in Tajikistan. With a length of more than 5 kilometers, this tunnel is located about 80 kilometers from the capital Dushanbe and connects it to the city of Juyand. Its construction was vital to avoid passing through Uzbekistan and facilitate internal transport, especially during harsh winters. but conditions inside the tunnel have historically been dangerous, with poor ventilation, inadequate lighting, and water accumulation, which has caused numerous accidents and reinforced its dark nickname. In addition to this tunnel, Tajikistan is home to the Rogun Dam, which will become the highest in the world in the coming years, with a projected height of 335 meters. We will soon go into detail about this impressive dam, and also discover why Tajikistan's border with Afghanistan is considered by many to be one of the most dangerous on Earth. But before delving into these topics, it is interesting to learn some curious facts about the inhabitants of this corner of the world, whose lives are deeply marked by this extreme and inaccessible location. Surviving among some of the coldest and most enormous mountains on the planet is no easy task. As you can imagine, life here is full of challenges, and the customs of the people of Tajikistan reflect this harsh environment. In fact, one of the most surprising realities of this country is that polygamy, which has been permitted for centuries, is still present and even common today in some parts of the country, mainly in rural areas. The reasons behind this trend are linked to the difficult living conditions and particular social dynamics of the region. Having multiple wives is seen here as a survival strategy. The mass emigration of young men in search of work has left many women without financial support within the country. In many rural areas, women have seen polygamy as a way to guarantee their livelihood and that of their children, as well as to ensure more offspring to work the difficult land. Some women become second or third wives in unofficial religious marriages, accepting this reality as a way to survive economically in a region where opportunities are limited. Tajikistan is considered by many to be one of the strangest countries on the planet due to some of its practices and laws. Among them, one of the most controversial has to do with mandatory virginity tests, which were implemented in 2015. These tests, required before marriage, were justified on the grounds of preventing diseases transmitted during intimate relations. However, many voices, both inside and outside Tajikistan, have pointed out that these practices violate women's fundamental rights. Human rights organizations have strongly criticized these tests, arguing that they represent a form of control over women's private lives and personal decisions, limiting their autonomy and dignity. But this is not the only controversial reality in this remote country, where the Tajik government imposes control over the dress and lifestyle of its citizens. These controls, which include restrictions on both women and men, are part of a series of measures aimed at strengthening a national identity that, according to the authorities, is more in line with the country's traditional values. Restrictions on women's clothing prohibit the wearing of certain traditional Islamic garments, such as the Islamic veil called the hijab, as they are contrary to all forms of extremist expression, but also Western clothing considered indecent, such as miniskirts, tight pants, and even sandals. Although the authorities maintain that these policies seek to promote a more unified national cultural identity, many people see them as a form of control over women and their personal freedoms. In addition to restrictions on clothing, the government has imposed limitations on religious practices, despite the fact that the majority of the population is Muslim. Among the most striking restrictions are limits on the wearing of beards by men, the hijab, and participation in public activities related to Islam, such as Ramadan festivities and pilgrimages. Restrictions as shocking as the one carried out by the police in 2016, when thousands of men with beards were shaved, arguing that these styles could be linked to religious extremism. These measures, although aimed at curbing what the government considers a threat of extremism, have increased social and political tensions, especially among those who see them as a form of control over private and religious life. In this country so full of contrasts, where the struggle for survival in one of the most inhospitable places on the planet is taking place, practices that many would consider unthinkable are being carried out, such as kidnapping women to turn them into wives and other incredible realities that you will learn about later, as we now move on to discover the highest dam and the most dangerous border crossing on the planet. What you have seen so far is not even the most extravagant or striking. The Rogan Dam is located on the Vaksh River, a colossal structure that is fundamental to the country's energy independence, as it generates a large part of the electricity needed by the entire country. The dam is scheduled for completion in 2029, and its success is crucial for the country's economic development and energy needs, mainly due to the extreme climatic conditions in this region, with areas considered among the coldest and most inhospitable on the planet. In Tajikistan, winters are long and severe, with temperatures that can drop below 40 degrees below zero. Rainfall is scarce in some areas, while in others, such as the Fedchenko Glacier, more than 2 meters of snow fall each year. These conditions have shaped the lives of the inhabitants, who have developed ways of living adapted to this inhospitable environment. To get around, for example, in addition to having to use tunnels with extreme conditions such as the Tunnel of Death, they also use one of the most iconic routes through these mountains, the Pamir Highway, also known as the Ime 41. This road, which connects the capital Dushanbe in Tajikistan with Osh in Kyrgyzstan, is one of the highest in the world, reaching altitudes of over 4,600 meters at the Akbaital Pass. Its maintenance is challenging due to erosion, landslides, and frequent earthquakes, making it one of the most dangerous routes for travelers. But if there is one place in Tajikistan that is truly dangerous and inaccessible, apart from the dangers of these mountains and roads, it is the country's border with Afghanistan, especially in the Wakan Corridor region, which many consider to be the most dangerous border on Earth. This narrow strip of Afghan territory was created in the 19th century by a geopolitical agreement between the British Empire and the Russian Empire, with the aim of preventing their territories from directly bordering each other and triggering tensions or wars. The Wakan Corridor is a natural wall formed by peaks over 7,000 meters high, deep canyons, glaciers, and meltwater rivers. It is one of the least inhabited and least accessible regions in the world, where snow and ice block the border crossings for much of the year. There are no conventional border crossings in most of the area, except for a few isolated points such as Ishkashim in Tajikistan. Many of the roads are dirt tracks or mule trails, used by local traders, nomadic caravans, and unfortunately, also by smugglers and traffickers. Despite its isolation, the border is guarded by Tajik and Russian guards due to its proximity to routes used for trafficking drugs, weapons, and, in recent times, extremist militants fleeing Afghanistan. In addition to all this, this is not just any border, but a boundary of geopolitical interests, cultures, Persian and Turkic, religions, and economic realities. If you were to cross directly from Afghanistan to China via Tajikistan, you would have to set your clock forward no less than 3.5 hours. It is the largest direct time difference between two neighboring territories in the world. This border crosses some of the highest and most unforgiving mountains on the planet, the Pamir and Hindu Kush mountain ranges. As a result, avalanches, snowstorms, hidden glaciers, unstable roads, and ice-blocked passes often make it impassable even in summer. Winter temperatures can drop below -50 degrees Celsius in some places, and in certain high areas, the lack of oxygen can cause altitude sickness, even for experienced explorers. For all these reasons, on the Wakan Corridor border, whether attempting to cross on foot or by vehicle, nature can be as deadly or worse than a war zone. In addition to everything you already know, it is a hotspot in terms of military surveillance and trafficking. Trafficking of substances, as it is part of the famous opium route, a place that begins in Afghanistan and causes tons of this and other substances to cross into Central Asia through this border every year, often transported by clandestine caravans. Many people are also believed to escape from neighboring countries through these areas, which are also frequented by extremist groups. It is a region where thousands of anti-personnel mines remain hidden under the snow or earth, as a result of recent civil wars. That is why crossing this border without knowledge is risking your life, whether or not there are bullets in the air. Although the border seems peaceful when viewed on maps, in reality it is one of the hottest spots not only in Tajikistan, but also on the planet. a place that is certainly worth knowing about in order to avoid it on a possible trip to this remote region of the world. At this point, before we tell you about the most impressive places and the craziest prohibitions that exist here, we would like to ask you, if you ever travel to Tajikistan, would you dare to cross the Wakan Corridor? How would you feel if they checked whether you were a virgin, the clothes you were wearing, or if dozens of police officers chased you down the street to cut off your beard? What has impressed you most about this amazing country? Pause the video and leave us your comments. Doing so is the best way you can help the channel so that we can continue working every week to bring you more interesting content like this. So, thank you for being part of Uncensored World. Thinking about the wonders of this country, a trip to Tajikistan would not be complete without a visit to Lake Iscandraul, considered one of the most desirable and photographed natural destinations in this region. This turquoise lake, surrounded by peaks over 3,000 meters high, is located in the heart of the Fan Mountains and is one of the most impressive landscapes in all of Central Asia. Its name is shrouded in legend, as Iscandraul means Lake of Alexander, in reference to Alexander the Great, who is said to have passed through these lands during his military campaigns, and whose horse, according to tradition, is believed to have drowned in these waters. In addition to this lake, Tajikistan is home to such extraordinary natural phenomena as mountains made entirely of salt. These formations, known as the Koja Mumin Mountains, are located near the city of Kulyab and are one of the most unusual landscapes in the region. At first glance, they look like stone hills or common rock formations, but they are actually gigantic masses of salt that emerged from the subsoil millions of years ago, shaped by geological pressure and erosion from wind and rain. The reason for their existence is that, in ancient times, this region was covered by enormous inland seas which, when they evaporated, left huge deposits of salt in the underground layers. Over time, the pressure of the earth caused these salt masses to rise to the surface, forming authentic white and gray mountains that on sunny days seem to shine as if covered with snow, creating an almost unreal landscape. Extraordinary realities such as the extravagance of this country's president are also part of Tajikistan's unique character. The man who has led this mountainous nation for decades is Emomali Rammon, who has held the office of president since 1994 and whose figure has given rise to one of the most striking and peculiar personality cults in Central Asia. Rammon, who started out as the director of a collective farm during the Soviet era, consolidated his power after the civil war that shook Tajikistan in the early years of its independence. Since then, he has not only ruled the country with an iron fist, but has also shaped an entire system where his image and name have become symbols of authority. His cult of personality is visible in every corner of the country. For example, his portrait hangs in public offices, schools, shops, and even private homes. His speeches are constantly broadcast by state media, and any national holiday usually revolves around his figure, his achievements, or his words. One of the most notable curiosities about Rammon is that in 2015, he officially changed his surname and that of his children, removing the Russian ending OV to adopt a more purely Tajik form. He thus went from being known as Emomali Rahmonov to simply Emomali Rammon, and encouraged the entire population to do the same as part of his policy of asserting a national identity far removed from Soviet roots. In addition, he has amended the Constitution several times to ensure his right to be re-elected indefinitely, and in one of those reforms, he even removed the minimum age limit for his own son to run for president in the near future, thus strengthening the possibility of establishing a family dynasty. Rammon has also been the protagonist of striking acts that border on the extravagant. Among them is the construction of a gigantic national flag on a 165-meter-high flagpole, the tallest flagpole in the world, with the flag flying imposingly over the capital, Dushanbe. This symbol was not only intended to commemorate Tajikistan's independence, but also to project the image of a strong and united country under his leadership. An extravagant and authoritarian president, he has turned Tajikistan into a land of unusual laws, many of which border on the absurd and have aroused the curiosity of travelers and journalists. From restrictions on dress and rules on purity before marriage, which you already know about, to even more surprising ones, such as banning Christmas celebrations, or even limiting the way people can express their sadness at a funeral. In Tajikistan, public celebrations have been subject to strict control. The authorities have established that parties such as birthdays, weddings, or even gatherings to celebrate Christmas must be held only within the family environment. Large celebrations in public spaces are prohibited, and those who fail to comply are liable to substantial fines. But the crazy laws do not end there, as even in the worst moments of grief, such as funerals, the government has dictated how citizens should behave. Crying out loud, lamenting excessively, or displaying exaggerated gestures of suffering, such as pulling one's hair or hiring mourners, is strictly prohibited. Mourning in Tajikistan should not last longer than 3 days, and it is recommended to avoid wearing black during that time, as it is considered contrary to the norms of sobriety and restraint promoted by the state. This level of control over emotions and private life even extends to religious celebrations, where the authorities regulate the number of attendees, the duration, and even the way in which rituals are performed, all with the argument of preserving public order and avoiding any display of fanaticism or collective, unrestrained behavior. As you can see, it's not just the climate or the mountains that impress in Tajikistan, but also its peculiar rules on how to live and even how to cry. In a few minutes, I'll tell you the best way to get to and around this country, which, as well as being one of the cheapest and most amazing destinations in Central Asia, is also one of the least explored. But first, we'll learn about the fashion for gold teeth and what many consider to be the country's best-kept secret: the enigmatic ruins of Penicent. Deep in the extreme and high mountains of Tajikistan lie these ruins, one of the most fascinating and unknown archaeological sites in the world, a place that has been nicknamed the Pompeii of Central Asia, because, like the famous Roman city, Penicent was frozen in time after a sudden destruction that allowed its temples, dwellings, and murals to remain hidden and protected under layers of rubble for centuries. Thanks to this, archaeologists have been able to unearth perfectly preserved remains that offer a unique window into what daily life was like in this region before the spread of Islam. The most amazing thing about Penicent is its murals and structures, which show in incredible detail the lifestyle, customs, and beliefs of an almost forgotten civilization. Frescoes depicting banquets, religious rituals, and battles have been found in Penicent, as well as temples dedicated to ancient deities and dwellings that still retain their original layout. Although no petrified bodies have been found, as in Pompeii, the degree of preservation of these artifacts and murals makes Penicent a unique place to understand what life was like in this ancient city before the arrival of Islam. It is more than likely that some archaeologists in the area expected to find the most precious material on Earth, gold, among the ruins of Penicent, especially considering that a few years ago, in Tajikistan, it was trendy to wear teeth made of this material. This fashion began to gain popularity due to the influence of local cultural traditions and the social status that gold represents. Interestingly, this fashion was not only a symbol of wealth, but also of longevity, as in Tajikistan it was believed that having gold teeth granted protection, power, and good health. So in some communities, these gold teeth were seen as a lucky charm, something that merged with the ancestral beliefs of the region. Throughout history, gold has been seen as a symbol of wealth and power, and this custom of wearing gold teeth also became a way of showing prosperity, especially in urban areas. Although the practice has declined today, it remains a tradition in some regions of this extravagant and beautiful country. Considering everything you've discovered about this fascinating corner of the planet, it's natural to wonder how to get there and enjoy Tajikistan to the fullest. That's why at Uncensored World, we've taken the time to thoroughly research everything you need to know to explore this mysterious and captivating country. To travel from Europe or America, There are several options. From Europe, you can fly to Dushanbe, the capital of Tajikistan, with connections through airlines such as Turkish Airlines or Aeroflot, which almost always have connecting flights via Moscow. From America, the most common option is to fly to a major European hub such as Istanbul, and then connect with a flight to Dushanbe. Upon arrival, the main form of transportation within the country is by road, and there are taxis and local buses that will take you to the main cities and attractions. However, it is crucial to be aware of certain dangers when traveling around the country. As you now know, the border with Afghanistan is known for being one of the most dangerous not only in this region, but also in the world, and it is recommended to avoid this area at all costs. You should also be cautious when crossing the Tunnel of Death, a dangerous underground road that, although picturesque, has been the site of accidents and danger for travelers. In addition, there are some high mountain routes that, while offering spectacular scenery, are known for their dangerous conditions, so it is important to always take precautions before traveling in these areas. Despite these risks, Tajikistan is one of the cheapest and most impressive countries in all of Central Asia, making it an ideal destination for travelers on a tight budget. A coffee in a local cafe usually costs less than $1, while dinner for two can be between $10 and $15. As for accommodation, a night in a modest hotel will cost you around $20, and if you are looking for something more luxurious, prices do not usually rise above $50. In terms of safety, although Tajikistan is generally safe for tourists, it is always advisable to stay informed about local conditions, avoid border areas or areas of conflict, and travel with a guide whenever possible. At Uncensored World, we hope this video has helped you discover one of the most remote and unknown regions on the planet, and that you have found it as interesting as we have. If so, don't hesitate to leave us a like and a comment. It's the best way to help us continue working to bring you interesting content like this every week. Or like this video, which you can watch now to discover another of the most mysterious and beautiful places on the planet. Click on it, you're going to enjoy it.